So I wanted to share a little bit about arts, crafts. You can call it, label it, and as anything. So the context of art. There was a question yesterday, which was a very interesting question. What do the people get after pursuing all these various art forms that we have? So there can be several different parameters. One would be for their own culture, for their own heritage, for their own religious purposes. One would be as a skill which they exchange. They do some work and they get remuneration for it. Like if there's something associated with a wedding ritual, तो wedding के साथ जुड़ा है, तो the person can exchange this kind of things. There can be art or craft related to their डे टू डे लाइफ, जिसमें वो क्राफ्ट क्रिएट करेंगे. लेट्स टेक एन एग्जांपल के बैम्बू का कुछ स्ट्रक्चर, कोनिकल स्ट्रक्चर होता है. एमपी और ये रीजन्स में ज़्यादा देखा है मैंने कि कोन बनाते हैं, आइसक्रीम कोन. जस्ट इमेजिन एन आइसक्रीम कोन ऑफ मेड ऑफ बैम्बू वीविंग, और उसे एक रिवर बॉडी पे तो वाटर बॉडी के पास रखा जाता है वेर इट डज नॉट मूव. तो उसको पत्थरों से यूज करके रखते हैं. सो द फिश व्हेन दे move into that basket, they get stuck, so it becomes a very simple form of doing fishing. तो ऐसे टास्क, ऐसे क्राफ्ट्स वेरियस पर्पसेस से बनते. सो each art form that we saw in the last couple of sessions has a very specific purpose to fulfill. So in that way we can study arts in that perspective as well. Okay, what is the exact purpose behind doing it? Yeah. So here we'll look at the first art form called Rogan. So before that we need to understand the history of Rogan. So the origin of Rogan comes to us from the kingdom of Persia, or the Persian Empire. Yeah, so it's as old as 400 years old. The people who knew or had the knowledge of Rogan might have arrived into Kutch by migrating from Persia to Kutch by the via Sindh region से यहाँ पे आए. And today in the entire country, if you want to learn, understand, witness, experience the art of Rogan, there's just one village that you need to go, which is the Nironali village in Kutch, which is very close to which is between the Bunny grassland region, right? So the knowledge or the art form has been preserved by the Gafoor family of Nirona village since 1980s, who belong to the Khatri community, right? And it's a totally male hereditary men pursue this particular art form. And when is it done? We look into that. Abdul Ghaffur Khatri ji received Padma Shri awards for his effort in restoration and promotion of the Rogan art form, and he is also from the same Ghaffur family. So first we need to understand the context of Rogan. Why is it done? Yeah, let's answer that particular question. So Rogan was a art form which was practiced by men to create on the bridal clothes of women. अगर शादी के जो कपड़े, शादी के दिन जो कपड़े पहनने, उस पे रोगन करके उसकी शोभा बढ़ाई जाती थी, और इसलिए रोगन बहुत मशहूर था. इसी तरीके से कच्छ में भी ये ट्रेंड फॉलो हुआ है. So that becomes a part of a skill based exchange. Okay, this person, gentleman, has the knowledge of how to do Rogan. Some bride wants Rogan art done on a bridal dress, so वो उनके पास जाएगी, and then they'll get Rogan done, and in exchange he'll get paid for his services. So that becomes an occupational based art as well. So let us now try to learn the technique that goes behind Rogan. Now Rogan is a very complicated and a very technical art form, so you need to pay a little bit more attention, and if you have questions पूछ लीजिएगा. The first element is the preparation of their colors. Rogan का जो color होता है उसका preparation is a lengthy process. So it is a mixture of natural pigments cooked in castor oil, which is then boiled over the period of minimum 2 days, 2 से 3 दिन, depending on how thick consistency they want in their color. उसे पकाया जाता है. It is literally cooked, boil होता है पूरा color castor oil में, right? And the castor oil जो solution, color solution that we get is very thick and it is very shiny. Why is it shiny? Because it can get because of the inclusion of castor oil in it. So it's very lustrous and shiny looking. So then the color layer is applied or layered on the cloth using a stick or some other instrument, and the designs are then created using fingers first behind the cloth. Now how can we best understand? So just imagine this is the cloth. The person is pouring the ink on the color on the from the stick on the cloth, and with the use of fingers they are moving that color in a manner that it can create the various motifs. So it has extreme use of hand and eye coordination. You need to be uh, somebody who practices it on a regular basis, it requires years on to actually master this particular technique. So it's a very complicated. That's the reason behind it, right? So the painting then is done only on one side. The cloth is then carefully folded to create a mirror image, and then the final Rogan is presented before us. Because the color solution is very thick, it can very easily create a mirror image on the other half. It is then put, some weight is put on the cloth for a couple of days. It is let be वो वहीं वैसा ही रखा जाता है with weight on it, slight weight, not a very heavy वजन से, and then the final Rogan is then prepared in that manner. Yeah. So what type of motifs can be seen in the Rogan art form? So you have Persian alphabets, which can give you information that it is related to Persia and how Persian influence can be seen. Extreme use of floral designs, geometrical designs, and the element of tree of life. Again, tree of life is, as you can see through the entire discussion on art, a tree of life kitna recurring एक motif है among various other art forms, right? This particular image is by Padma Shri awardee Atul Ghafoor ji and taken from Wikipedia. Yeah. So yeah, these are some artifacts which were there in the Kutch Museum in Bhuj. So my photography was very pathetic back then, so you'll have to adjust and make do. So yeah, concentrate on the center of the photographs. You can clearly see the line, which can show you how the Rogan art form is then folded, and that is an impression that is left on it. Yeah, again, slightly different, but the creases can be seen on two sides now. Okay, so what is the story behind Rogan becoming very internationally renowned? Is that the story goes like in 2014 when Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji had traveled to the United States to meet the then President Barack Obama. So he, during that particular meet, had gifted Barack Obama two Rogan paintings called Tree of Life, and that is how very instantly Rogan became very popular. But what amount of popularity, just to give an idea how popular it is right now. So on any off day of the year, the village, Nirona village, will have a minimum of 4 to 5,000 people visiting it, and during the high tourism period, during the Run festival, it can be almost as much as 15 to 20,000 people visiting during that entire tenure of the Kutch festival. So you'll have big amount of people going there to buy it, to experience it, to document it, to talk to the artist. So yeah, you can just give an understanding कि रोगन अभी कितना popular हो गया है. Okay, so now we see a little different form of Pithora. We've already had a extensive discussion about the Pithora of the Ratwa community, and we've discussed also कि Bhil community का ही एक element Ratwa community है, and some part of the Bhils or some population or a certain group of the Bhils migrated towards this part of the Gujarat borders, where they found a very suitable location. That location का नाम था राठ, जिसमें उनका नाम पड़ा राठवा. So they are basically Bhils but called by a different name. So let's look at the differences or the similarities between the Pithoras. So first we need to understand who are the Bhils. So they are 17 million in population. They speak Bhili language, which is an Indo-Aryan language. We can find them in Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, Rajasthan, Gujarat. Apart from that, several other states as well. It is one of the largest community in the country. We have several historical recording information or documentation about the Bhil community. They were there during the 1857 mutiny as well, or the War of Independence, however you want to call it. So they were there in there. Even in the Battle of Haldi Ghati, we've looked into that. जो राणा प्रताप की जो आर्मी में maximum जो archers थे, they were from the Bhil community. So we have several references of the Bhil community participating in several other major events. In the Criminal Tribes Act of 1871, they were listed under the act by the British, and currently their constitutional status is as scheduled tribe, right? So now let's look at some aspects of tradition. Kya similarities hai? Again, it can be seen in form as of a mural. इन होम्स, तो दीवारों पे ही किया जाता है। द आर्टिस्ट इज कॉल्ड लिखंदरा। बेसिकली हमने पिथोरा में राठवा की पिथोरा में देखा कि द आर्टिस्ट इज कॉल्ड लखारा, यहाँ पे लिखंदरा कहा जाता है। In the Rathwa Pithora, we saw that Pithora is the problem solver, but in the Bhil tradition, he is the protector of households, right? यहाँ पे स्टोरी कैसे चेंज होती है? राठवा के पिथोरा की स्टोरी में हमने देखा कि बापा पिथोरो उनके कोर्ट में जाके डिमांड्स अ पार्ट ऑफ हिज किंगडम. इन द भिल ट्रेडिशन वी कम टू द स्टोरी that he is the nephew of Baba Ind, who already had the knowledge that Babo Pithoro is his nephew. He invites him to his court and hands over the kingdom to him. उसे पूरा kingdom दे देते हैं, and then leaves that place to live a life as an ascetic, right? So there's a little variation in that story. Then Bhil consider the practice or the art of Pithora not as an art form, but rather than an ritual, and it is looked in form of a looked from the perspective of a form of writing. So it's a communication tool है. जो प्रोसेस आर्टिस्टिक प्रोसेस जो लिखनदरा करता है उसे लीक कहा जाता है. तो बेसिकली इट इज मीन एक्चुअली ट्राइंग टू टेल अस क्या, तो राइटिंग दैट द लिखनदरा और द आर्टिस्ट इज एक्चुअली राइटिंग, राइट. then there are two clear divisions of the art form that can be observed in the Bhili Pithora. तो first upper half जो होता है that is called Devlok or the celestial world, and the lower half is called Bhulok or the living world or the earth basically. जो सबसे पहली रिचुअल जो होती है इन द भिली पिथोरा, इट्स डन इन द डेडिकेशन ऑफ जामी माता, which is basically the goddess of earth, while in the राठवा का पिथोरा बाबा गणे का सबसे बड़ा पहला पूजा होता है. आफ्टर worshipping बाबा गणे, rest of the rituals are then followed, right? So that's, you can see similarities and differences between the couple traditions. So what are the motifs that we can see in the Bhili Pithora? So horses again become a very important what you can say motif in it. You can see the motifs of Baba Ind, or he is also called Indi Raja. Raja Bhoj comes again. Rani Kajal, Kali Koyal also comes in. Kandurano is the same person who's been called in the Pithora of the Rathwas as Savarya Molan or Kanduraja. So his name slightly changes over here. Very unique motif in the Bhili Pithora is the element or the motif of Nar, is basically the lion of Jhabua. तो झाबुआ डिस्ट्रिक्ट जहाँ पे भील का पॉपुलेशन बहुत ज़्यादा हम देखते हैं, तो वहाँ की भाषा में, भीली भाषा में लायन को नार कहते हैं. तो नार का एक एलिमेंट बहुत ही यूनिकली यहाँ पे देख सकते हैं. देन एलिमेंट्स ऑफ नेचर, डेली एक्टिविटीज, रोमांस, एग्रीकल्चर, ये सब. टॉडी ट्री है तो टार्ड ट्री का बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंस होता है, तो दैट इज अ रिकरिंग एलिमेंट. कॉस्मिक मोटिव्स, elements of sun, moon, stars, etc. Then another interesting or element is seen very commonly in the Bhili Pithora is Gotraj. Now Gotraj is not just a practice or a ritual, it is also name of a deity as well. Gotraj Dev bhi hote hain unke, और these are basically depicted in the art form as memory stones or hero stones, however you want to call them. And then several Kul Devtas and Kul Devtis with a very strong element of storytelling again, right? So here are a couple of paintings done by a very eminent artist called Lado Baiji. She's from Bhopal and she's a Bhil community member. Or these are the couple of paintings that I can share. So we can see cosmical elements, animal motifs, and slightly stylistically different from what we can see in the Ratva Pithora. Yeah. Okay. So here's image of Bhili Pithora from Sahapedia by artist Ramesh Kataraji. There's a story behind this, Jal Mata. So if possible, and if we have time at the end of the session, I'll come back to it and tell you the story. Yeah. So let's move on to our next art form that we want to learn. So we'll learn about Warli next. So let's look at के वारली community और उसका art form का थोड़ा history जानते हैं. तो वारली people can be found predominantly in the regions of Maharashtra and Gujarat. They speak Warli language. उनका community and language is the same name, Warli. It's an Indo-Aryan language, right? The religion that the Warli community follows is very close to animism, and the origin of the community can be traced as far back as the 10th century AD. The art is considered very similar to the art observed in भीमबेटका cave. So भीमबेटका से बहुत ही similar style में ये देखी जाती है, and the art form came to the prominence, और लोगों को कब पता चला इसके बारे में, और let's say discover कब हुआ, तो during 1970s Warli became very prominent. So traditionally Warli is practiced during two particular reasons, either for marriages or for festivals. तो जब marriages में होता है तो it is called लग्नाचा चौक, और जब festivals के लिए होता है तो it is called देव चौक. It is specifically done in the honor of Palghat, which is the mother goddess of fertility. So it's deity के लिए होता है. And who practices, और कौन ये practice करता है क्या art form? So women called Savasini, जिनके basically what does the term Savasini means? Married women whose husbands are still alive. Those are the people who practice the art form of Warli. But we also have men artists in the Warli art as well. Huh? Okay, so here's how painting taken from Wikipedia. It's done by eminent elder artist, बहुत ही famous Warli artist है जीवा सोमा मशे जी, जिनकी आर्ट फॉर्म देख सकते हैं. तो जो एक्सरसाइज हमने की थी प्रीवियस सेशन में कि कौन सा ये है, आई होप नाउ यू गाइस आर expert enough to identify which is a Warli painting and which is a digital painting. So you can clearly see there's a very, very stark difference between the two art forms. Even though the style and the motives and everything are quite similar, they are quite different. Right? So what are the motives that we can see in the Warli art form? So shapes, three basic shapes are seen predominantly: circles, squares, and triangles. Circle of life is what the circle is referring. As we can see in this particular, the central motive is a very people with joined hands, a common motive, which is the circle of life. And then we can see motives of deities, Palghat as well. Then several motives related to their tarpa dance and the tarpa musical instrument. So the name of the dance and the musical instrument is the same, of which we have an image. We'll have some more images of the tarpa in the next session that we'll have tomorrow. But this is just to give an idea कि tarpa instrument क्या होता है. The size of the tarpa instrument varies. ये सब इससे भी छोटा एक size होता है, and there's a very big size which we'll see tomorrow. Tarpa, this particular tarpa is of the Chaudhary community of Gujarat. तो ये सूरत के रीजन में व्यारा करके एक तालुका आता है, वहाँ पे वो बहुत ज़्यादा तादाद में चौधरी कम्युनिटी रहती है. तो ये चौधरी कम्युनिटी का तारपा है. तो तारपा इंस्ट्रूमेंट हैज सेवरल डिफरेंट नेम्स, डोबरू, तारपा भी कहा जाता है. Apart from that, we have elements of nature, agriculture, hunting, fishing, dance, music, musical instruments, flora and fauna. So whatever is in their vicinity, उनके world के आसपास जो भी है, those elements can be seen in the Warli art form. So okay, so here's a little bit information about the most famous Warli artist. So his name, this gentleman's name is Jiva Soma Masheji, who received several awards. He lived from 1934 to 2018, considered one to be the most famous Warli artist. He received several international awards, of which Prince Claus Award is one of them, and our very own Padma Shri Award as well. Okay. So little exercise. Let me see if you guys are awake. कौन सा वारली है, कौन सा नहीं है? Yeah, कोई try करना चाहेगा? Which is वारली, which is not वारली?
Sir.
Yeah.
The picture on the left side, which is a little more brownish, is Warli, I guess, and
yeah. Okay.
On the right is not an Warli.
Okay. Anybody else?
So none of them are Warli, sir. So the just stated earlier, none of the shapes are matching to it, and it's written below.
True. So yeah, that's the exercise again. कितना attention आप दे रहे थे वो हम, that is what we were trying to do. So none of them are warli. If you observe very closely, the picture at the bottom has a signature of the artist and where he is from. So the warli has very circular motifs. Circle of life बहुत ही predominant होता है. So it is always going to look circular to you. It itself will always look very rectangular, conical in shape. So that is the least that you can identify का जो parameter है. It itself is always either rectangular or very conical aspects उसमें, but the warli will always have a circular motif. The background in warli is predominantly or most commonly brownish और मिट्टी का color होता है, while on the other hand यहाँ पे reddish मिट्टी का, लाल मिट्टी का color दिखता है, right? But the color which is used, so rice flour का color दोनों use करते हैं, but this is just an exercise to see if you guys were paying attention. Okay, let's move on. So now we come to we've seen a lot of murals, art form, paintings देखे. Sculpture के बारे में थोड़ा हम जानने की कोशिश करते हैं. Just give me a minute. I'll try to see if this can be okay. So we want to understand a little bit about the traditional sculpture style of Mangrove. Now Mangrove is an art एक totem pole है basically. This is the image of it, and it's related to the Gond community tradition associated with their marriage rituals. And it is crafted by the Pradhan community of the Pradhan branch of the Gond people. It's a wedding ritual or basically a totem pole के ऐसा ये बनता है. Sizes varies. It can be as small as 1 feet and as tall as 3 to 4 feet. It is also called Mangrohan. Okay. तो कैसे ये होता है? Let's look at the traditional aspects of it. So Pradhan Gonds, which are considered the most creative, they are basically the bards, chroniclers, musicians, singers, artists, oral historians of the entire Gond culture and heritage. So they possess all the knowledge of it. And people who have weddings in their houses will approach the Pradhan Gond before a wedding and will commission him to create a mangrohi for them. Pradhan Gond jungle में जाएगा and he'll fetch wood of a sal tree to create the mangrohi, right? So sal tree का soft wood का होता है, so it becomes easy to sculpt in it or carve through it. So that is why sal wood is used predominantly. There has to be no joints allowed. It has to be done in a single piece of wood. कोई joint allowed नहीं होता है. It should not have any embellishments on it. It has to be totally pure. कोई भी edges नहीं होने चाहिए, टूटा फूटा नहीं होना चाहिए. It has to be very very pure because it is a very important part of the rituals. And then how it is made into practice. तो जो मंडप का एरिया सिलेक्ट किया गया होता है उसके सेंटर में इसको बेरी किया जाता है, इसको गाड़ा जाता है उसमें. ब्राइड के फैमिली में भी सेम चीज होती है और ग्रूम के साइड में भी सेम चीज होती है. द रिचुअल रिमेन्स कांस्टेंट, राइट? तो कहाँ कितना डेप्थ तक बेरी होता है? तो इट इज बेरीड एज फार एज द कलश ऑन द टॉप. तो पूरा बाकी का जो बॉटम पार्ट है वो पूरा का पूरा ग्राउंड के अंदर होता है. दैट इज हाउ इट बिकम्स इन अ रिचुअलिस्टिक मैनर. कैसे प्रैक्टिस करते हैं? सो व्हाट इज द सिंबलिज्म बिहाइंड द Mangrohi totem pole? So it stands basically as a symbol for connection. It can be a connection between gods and humans during the auspicious event of marriage. It can be a connection between two families. It can be a connection between two people, husband and wife, right? So on the right you have an image of Mangrohi. The artifact is in yellow in color. जो है वो Mangrohi है. And little bit about the Madhya Pradesh Tribal Museum in Bhopal. It's a very very big museum, so you guys, if you possible, try and visit it. It will showcase you the diversity or the indigenous diversity of the Madhya Pradesh state. The artifacts in this particular museum are created larger than life, so life size से बड़े बड़े sculptures बने गए हैं. तो ये जो मंगरोई आप देख रहे हैं, it is almost 4-5 feet से भी मतलब बहुत ज़्यादा बड़ा है. जो नॉर्मल साइज होती है उससे बहुत बड़ा है. एंड द इंटरेस्टिंग पार्ट अबाउट दिस म्यूजियम इज कि सारे इंडिजिनस कम्युनिटी के लोग, उनके ही कम्युनिटी के लोग के आर्टिजन्स को बुला के इस म्यूजियम में सारे आर्टिफैक्ट्स वैसे बनाए गए हैं, राइट? तो उनके ही लोग ने बनाए हैं. दे आर मेड बाय देयर ओन पीपल. सो इट विल गिव यू अ वेरी वेरी क्लोज टू दी 100% आइडिया कि कैसे अलग अलग ट्रेडिशंस होते हैं. मानव संग्रहालय एक अकेला म्यूजियम नहीं है भोपाल में वेर यू कैन विजिट टू visit. You can should basically also visit this particular museum. It has a very very rich collection. So what are the motifs that we can look at? मोटिव्स के पर्सपेक्टिव से मंगरोई को कैसे देखेंगे? So it is basically a carved totem pole. So there are several motives, of which the kalash is the most important, and it is always supposed to be on top, as we can see in this particular image. There are several elements of trees, animals, flowers, fruits, nature, cosmic elements as well. I'll try to give you a bit close up of it if possible. Just let me know if you can see. Okay. Just to give you an idea कि कितना minor carving work is being done in it. This was created for Bhasha and Adivasi Academy by Basant Uikeji of Amarkantak region. You can just understand the extent of minor carving that is made into use. It's almost 1.5 feet something, and it is from the traditional sal wood.
So what would be the size of this?
1 foot से थोड़ा बड़ा है. I do not remember the exact dimensions, but the width would be a very, it's very small. तो इतना ही है width में. The height, I am very poor with metric system, so I won't be able to answer it properly, but it's not that big. जो common practice है, depends कि वो किस तरीके से करते. This was for an art workshop, तो उनको जितना wood लाए थे उसमें उन्होंने बना दिया था. So this can ये शिव जी से related भी हो सकता है. There are several interpretations of it. Flora and fauna के कुछ elements हम यहाँ पे देख रहे हैं. Yeah, so again flora and fauna के. There is another image, मतलब इसका reverse image I could not find it, which is very sad because I would have loved like to show you that as well. But these were from very back then. I have not been able to go to the Adivasi Academy since then. Since the pandemic came about, so that's why. So yeah, sorry for that. उसकी दूसरा side I could not show you. There are 4 or 5 photographs of which I just had one of them, so that's the sad part of. Yeah, okay. So let's learn about something else. तो डोकरा के बारे में जानते हैं. I hope you guys know about डोकरा, but let's imagine के डोकरा का origin क्या है. So it does not require to go to people and understand और क्या करना है. आपको बस एक small visit करनी है, where you'll learn at the end of the story. So let's take a hypothetical scenario के 4,500 years ago, there might have been an artist who was trained in the art of metallurgical craft. Metallurgy को use करके you could make different art forms वगैरह. So one fine day decided to make a small figurine of a girl in a dancing pose. Yeah. After that, over a period of time, the place, the region, the civilization he lived in or belonged to disappeared for reasons unknown, and so did the artist, right? But the little sculpture that he had crafted survived and was rediscovered several centuries later. And the sculpture that we are trying to talk about has become a synonymous or become an icon with the much discussed, studied, research civilization, which we today call as the Indus Valley civilization. While the sculpture is the Mohenjo-daro's dancing girl. So the Mohenjo-daro's dancing girl is the, can be said, it is the first Dhokra casting sculpture that we have in the country, the oldest. Let's not say first, but the oldest. So yeah, I hope you guys know कि कहाँ है. So National Museum दिल्ली में जाके आप इसे देख सकते हैं. And this will be the best example कि how old is the art of Dhokra casting. Yeah, so let's look at some community aspects. So which are the people or who are the communities that practice it? So the most famous community that practice it is called Dhokra Damar community of West Bengal. और उस कम्युनिटी के नाम से ये आर्ट फॉर्म को भी नाम मिला है. तो डोकरा डामर से डोकरा आर्ट फॉर्म आया है. Apart from that, several other communities in the present times have been doing it, but Situlias, Gantaras, Thatri, Ghasi, and Patudis are also being practicing for a long time. Nowadays, even have people from the Orao and the Gond and the other communities also doing it, because it's an art form that they want to learn and then build on it. Where can we observe the Dhokra casting art forms? In the regions of Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh, Jharkhand, Odisha, West Bengal, and Bihar, right? So which is the best place for you to visit and learn about but learn about Dhokra casting. So you can go to the Bastar region of Chhattisgarh, and then you can. So basically, the epicenter of the entire art form. So there is several villages have primary occupation is to create to practice the Dhokra art form. So yeah. So वी लर्न अबाउट हमने डोकरा कास्टिंग के बारे में थोड़ा बहुत जानते तो सभी है कि ऐसे स्कल्पचर्स वगैरह वी बाय फ्रॉम द हैंडलूम फेयर्स दैट आर देयर इन द सिटीज एंड द टाउन्स एंड वी ब्रिंग इट बैक होम टू डेकोरेट सर्टेन थिंग बट हाउ आर दे मेड ये कैसे बनते हैं थोड़ा उसके बारे में जानते हैं लेट्स गो बियॉन्ड व्हाट वी सी लेट्स लुक एट द टेक्निक उसमें किस तरीके से बनता है तो दैट्स अ वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग थिंग टू लर्न वेरी इजी टू लर्न एज वेल अगर आप बहुत ही if you are good with working with your hands you can learn very easily. So the first thing we need to understand कि clay का एक first layer बनता है the image is indented. It is clay के part के दो part बनते हैं the first layer and the third layer और उसके बीच में जो space होती है it is filled with beeswax, right? तो पूरा mold बनता है there are two pieces और two pieces के बीच में की जो empty space है वहाँ पे beeswax भरा जाता है and there's a pouring duct and the drain duct at the top and the bottom, right? तो उसका एक पार्ट क्या then after the mold is prepared and ready to process the person or the artist will prepare will heat their liquid sorry the whatever metal that it is planning to use it can be brass it can be copper or other elements जो भी है उसे बहुत high temperature पे heat करके it has to be liquefied and then it is poured into the mold by the pouring duct से उसे pour करते हैं and because of the heat beeswax का जो layer जो हमने बीच में डाला था it melts and is replaced by the liquid metal. So after cooling and letting it properly solidify we get the figurine in the end. So that is the entire technique behind it. And the technique is called lost wax technique because after pouring wax gets lost so technique का नाम भी उस तरीके से तो that is how basically we get. So उसमें clay में कितने अच्छे से आपने इमेजरी की है और कितना प्रॉपरली आपने बीज वैक को पुश कर करके यू हैव अप्लाइड इट टू इंश्योर कि वो मोल्ड भी ना टूटे और बी वैक भी प्रॉपरली हर जगह इन एवरी क्रिवेस इट हैज टू बी इट हैज टू गो प्रॉपरली तो ही वो ब्रास या तो जो भी लिक्विड आप सॉरी मेटल लिक्विड जो आपने किया है इट हैज टू देन रिप्लेस द वैक्स तो हर जगह पे आपको वैक्स प्रॉपरली जा रहा है कि नहीं उसको ध्यान देना होता है. So you can just understand that it is a slightly technical thing, but it can be learned very easily if you are very good working with your hands. So what are the different motives that we can look जो हम डोकरा कास्टिंग में देखते हैं? So elements of mythology, religion, deities, animals, floral designs, human figures, musicians, social activities, and several modern commercial design that we can see in the recent times. Let's take an example of this image that we saw in the initial thing. It's a deity which has a story behind it. The story is you understand her as Saraswati, so person deity related to knowledge. So this particular deity gave humanity the art or the knowledge of रीडिंग और नॉलेज दिया बेसिकली कि आप कैसे नॉलेज आपका बढ़ा सकते हो तो किताब दी और किताब से आप पढ़ के आपका नॉलेज डेवलप करो. So there's a deity in that particular context. ये आप इसको देख सकते हैं. These are their local deities. इस तरीके से वो पोर्ट्रे करते हैं. It's another image, and this basically also helps us to understand different culinary traditions or society के structures भी हम इससे देख सकते हैं. तो this particular image from Wikipedia is showing a village lady grinding ants for her family. So basically वो चटनी ant की चटनी बनाती है so that they can eat. So how and what kind of food that they consume is also can be studied through their art form. Okay, so we have some images shared by artist Aarti Baraskar ji, so that we can just look, have a little idea about different artifacts that can be done through Dhokra casting. So on the right, we have religious iconography ka sculpture. On the left is a slightly mixture of both commercial and religious motif. On the left is a totally commercial design with using religious iconography. On the right is the photo is quite clear that what the element is talking about.